We're looking forward to now going into a fireside chat. And Erin and her team could not make it, so I get Jennifer all to myself and as the expert. And so please help me welcome Jennifer Couch with Caprock, and she's a managing director, marketing director, managing director. Excellent. Jennifer, why don't you get us started? We're going to share with you kind of that stickiness and how to provide value to your clients from a community perspective, and then how to just get that X factor when it may appear that everyone is working within the framework of a highly regulated industry. So Jennifer, introduce yourself and share with us, some pivotal pieces that you think are happening in the industry now.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. And you can tell a marketing person wrote this if it's the X factor, right? No pressure there. Honestly, I don't think there is an X factor. I've been in many different industries recently. Most recently, the financial industry. Caprock is a multifamily wealth management office, so we really focus in on ultra high net worth individuals, so very targeted audience for who we would be talking to. But I also have spent a lot of time in everything from higher education, which is also ultra-regulated, to e-commerce, international, national, so on and so forth. So we have multiple locations, and my product in particular is our advisors. So when I think about, content from a perspective of that way, that strategy and the different aspects that come along with that can be very multifaceted.
So in the sea of sameness, how does an organization differentiate itself in the marketplace?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that I noticed coming into the financial industry in particular. You can tell the regulations, but you can also tell that there hasn't been a really strong, I would say, true marketing presence there. Most of the stuff that's written, and I'm assuming most of you guys, just from the few people that I have talked to, have came into this with a group of people that have a very specific way in which they talk about the work they do, the financial aspects and things like that. I don't think that it was intentional to be the sameness. I think that it is just very natural to describe it that way. So when we think about the sea of saneness, there's a couple of different approaches. So my approach is starting with foundation. I think some people kind of skipped over this part, but it's really critical. And if you haven't done it, it's not too late, in my opinion, to back up and do that again. We talk a lot about personas. And several of the speakers brought up kind of thinking about that person that you're trying to reach, that's the potential customer or the potential client. I think there's another persona that's really important for you to think about, and that's the persona of your company or firm. We think a lot about who that customer is and how we get in front of them and what information they want. But our language and who we are is equally as important, and it's finding that synergies or how that comes together. So one way to do that is to interview your customers, clients, partners, and internal team. I took about 3 months to do this. I did not do it via survey. You can do things via survey, it makes it faster, but I think you miss a bit more of that qualitative aspect that you get from actually talking to them, and you'll find this thread. There'll be uniquenesses, but you certainly will find a thread of how people describe and what they get really excited about and why they're excited about that, the stories behind that you can then really connect your content into. So once you have those personas and that key messages or the messages that resonate across kind of that minimum viable message there, it's easy to develop out a strategy of how you might want to do that. I think about content very multifaceted throughout the entire journey. You're not the only one, so it's like, what are you saying? What are your partners saying? What are your advisors, your employees saying? And then what are your customers saying about you? And is that message resonating? Because we know it takes at least 12 to 15 times for somebody to hear something in this day and age through different ways of actually really engaging with that content, in my experience there.
So I want to expand on something you just shared about that very purposeful path and the journey. How do you ensure that there's limited to no friction, that the message is the same that you want to share? And sometimes you may not want to share the same message depending on the audience and how you do that. So can you expand a bit more about that kind of seamless journey for your customers?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting, and I would be curious too to hear what you guys, because I get a lot of, oh, we should do this or we should do that. I'm sure, I don't know if you guys have been like, hey, we should write an article about that. How many have heard that from their team? Or my favorite is like, oh, I saw our competitors do this, right? And so it's sometimes you get a lot of ideas and not enough resources or support to actually take into all of that, especially if you're a smaller team, and trying to be really focused on what works best. And so when I think about, as we approach that content and that development, and do we say the exact same thing? Well, underlying, we should. There should be a core of what we're saying, but there's uniquenesses in how we bring that forward. And to me, that is, with content, who's your hero? And when I say a hero, is it doesn't always have to be you, because we've all read and written probably some article that we spent way too much time on. Even if you use AI, I will tell you, you probably still spend a lot more time just trying to finesse it so that it's just so perfect. And then you think, did anybody really read this entire thing? So knowing how you engage with that, we're not the heroes. We're marketers. We're the people that are getting that message out there. And oftentimes our heroes are the advisors or people that would be working with them, the thought leaders. And then oftentimes it's our customers or the clients. They were talking a little bit earlier, I think it was Josephine talking about user-generated content. In our world, I don't have a lot of that. So I've had to pull that out a little bit because most ultra high net worth people don't want to talk about who they do business with, because that just attracts people to try to, get them to do something else. But using testimonials and being able to gather that, you don't have to ask them for a testimonial. Have a conversation and say, hey, you mentioned this when we were talking. Would you be okay if we shared this? Obviously, we're not going to, you're high celebrity, we're not going to say your name, but we would give enough to indicate this is a true person and this is how they say that. So the way you get that message, the underlying message, for an example, it's always helpful with specific examples, right? So we really focus in on having a really strong reporting aspect. We can talk about our reporting and it can get very technical with one group, and then we can have one of our clients talk about their report and how crazy easy it was and that everything's all together in one, right? And then we have a visual that shows that. So we don't even say anything about it. We're just like, it's all in one. So there's different ways to bring that message forward, but at the core, it should be nailing in one of your top differentiators in my mind.
And then you were talking about measuring, because that seems to be, I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people in the room in terms of getting that lift, showing the value when you're looking at budgets and branding and how much it takes to keep a client, how much it takes to attract a client. And would love to know more about how you're utilizing data to continue to share the vision that you have, support your thought process, and ensure that you have the funding that you need, the placement that you recommend, and would love to know more about that process in terms of data and how you're leveraging that.
Yeah, so that's the greatest thing for me about going digital. So I've been in marketing for more years than I care to talk about right now. But one of the biggest frustrations when we first started out was billboards or direct mail. You can do the match back, but certain ads in publications, right, magazines and stuff like that. It was so hard to measure, right? You could turn one off and see if it changed anything, but it was a longer process, right? And digital has been so great because there's so much now that we can use technology to test, learn, iterate, change it up. I mentioned before, I can't remember who was talking about this, but thinking about marketing has to come from your leadership, and sometimes we have to advocate for this and bring this forward in a way that they relate to. So we're in a financial industry. Numbers matter, right? Everybody is looking at numbers. And so thinking about this as an investment, if I put in $2, what's my return there? And that's where we can be successful. And then you figure out what the KPIs are that kind of get you to that aspect. And that's more of that funnel concept. So how many impressions, how many touch points do I have to have before somebody visits my site or they go to my site? How many times do I retarget them or feed them information via email or some other way that then they convert? Last touch attribution is always easiest, but it is not a true picture. I will tell you, even in a product marketing aspect, I worked for a company that did Christmas trees, and we had a 5.5 during the heat of season touch point attribution there. So just know that a lot of that, you can have both quantitative and qualitative. Content for me, as far as measuring that, because I think sometimes that becomes a bit of a challenge as well. I had a team at one point that their KPI was to write X number of blogs per month. And I was like, so what are we measuring? Just like that we wrote and sent that out? What did they do? What are we asking people to do? So every piece of content that you write should be tied back to your marketing goals and that entire journey, right? So I'll give an example because I know we're going to dig into that a bit more, but to measure that, you have goals with your content piece. Like, is this piece meant to be more just creating awareness? Are you just trying to drive traffic to your site? You know, where is it at in that funnel? And you can measure that. You can also measure the effectiveness of that. That's the great thing. So if you're running, I have ads that I run, and I ran a static text only, a static with a picture, a animated and a video through the same channel. I ran those from a format standpoint, and then I ran it from a different messaging standpoint. So I could tell, is the messaging resonating? And it's part of that integrated, everything coming together. You can learn through all these different channels. Search is great for that, because you put in if you're doing paid search, you probably have several different, phrases and stuff that you'll use, and Google will give you results back of like which one are engaging more people. And sometimes it's good information, and like it may even surprise you. Like, I'm always surprised what comes back. I was like, I would never say that, and that's the one that won, right? So I think being open to just thinking outside of the box with that and testing and learning what content resonates.
So it's thank you. It's great to see the insight of the journey. And just curious, with your customer or client profile being a particular, on a need-to-know basis, very quiet, how do you ensure that your value and your organization and your messaging are attracting the type of client that you like, and that you continue to have kind of a long view of where we are now? And this is probably more of a broader question around, if you reflect back, you probably think through what you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what was hot then, or what was compelling. So what about now, in terms of what you've just described to us, the content strategy, the marketing? What are you seeing like in the marketplace specific to your clientele?
Yeah, our clientele is, they have to have trust, right? I think we all do. I don't know that that's anything different the more money you have, but when you're dealing with somebody's money in particular, whether it's ultra high net worth or even, I'm going to go ahead and put myself in a category of a lot of people. I want to know that whoever I'm going to work with on that, I can trust. Do they have credibility? Because this is a very personal, very, very personal engagement. So it's kind of like finding a doctor. Referral is still so important. So we do a variety, and it's not a one shot, and that's why I said there's no like X factor. It's a multitude of that. It's like, I'm telling you that we do this well. Here's a case study, here's a testimonial. Hey, we just got on Barron's list too, right? Like there's multiple different things that help you from a very high level to build that trust. It should not replace what your team is out there doing. The relationship building and networking is critical. And we are here, in my mind, as marketing, and it's always like that marketing and sales, right? But we are here to make them shine. And so that's why I say a lot of times, like the people that you have in your organization are the face, and it's the most important thing. So if you have buy-in with them, I'm gonna give you an example. I struggled with resources, and I'm not the expert in my field. I'm good at getting it out there or knowing how we can maybe get it out there and collect information and know, hey, this is ranking high, we should talk about this. But I don't have that experience and that expertise there, but it was really hard to find somebody. So what I did, and this is the politics that we all have to deal with, I created a content champion group. So this is the people all around, called them champions, ask for their help, talk to them about some of the things, share back data that gets them excited, and then they're more willing to help out, right? And then our goal is to get that information from them any way we can. Sit down, have a conversation, record them, whatever it takes to then do the heavy lifting for them, because for whatever reason, people like think they have to write, or if they're on camera or anything, they kind of get a little hesitant, right? Like, am I gonna say something wrong? Like, did compliance approve this, right? So I think there's different ways to approach that.
Excellent. And then there are two other areas that we haven't touched on yet, but they're at top of our talk track. And one is about templates and expediting the creation of high-quality marketing materials. Do you use and create templates, and can you tell us the value of how to leverage those?
I do. It's always easier to start with a starting point for me personally, and I've found that helps too if you can give somebody an example of what you're doing. One example of that is a case study. They can take on many different formats, but if you can create a general template for how you would break down the information and share that, it helps people kind of get past that or just put some bullets down to support that, right? Emails, that's a no-brainer. I think some of the stuff has been around. You probably use Canva or whatever email tool that you have. They all have great templates that you can use. I've also been really adamant when we designed our website that it's iterative. It's always changing, and a website should be. So when first coming on, that was one of the first things. And when I talk about foundational, that was huge for us, is your website is marketing's best friend, right? Like, we should be able to track, we should be able to share information out there all the time, frequently, and just updating that as much as we possibly can. So templated landing pages, super easy to create, and then you just lift, repeat. Some of the content pieces that you create as far as templating, like if you have a certain topic, what does it look like if you're going to put it out in social, in a video format, in a article format? Like, those are kind of things that you can kind of templatize that would help you be more efficient at getting those pieces out.
And the other area, so thank you, the other area is around community involvement. And can you share with us how you're defining the community, and then how you are providing support either from the client perspective? Would love to know more about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is one area that I think the financial world has done phenomenally well. We kind of use that in my other past life of different organizations, is looking at what financial organizations do within their local communities. I do think that's one that's been really strong. We come at it from an authentic way. Our advisors or team members, they're on boards, they are out active doing volunteer work or working with different groups, but it's something near and dear to them. And it's more about them versus Caprock, the company. So when we showcase that, it's really a way for us to say, hey, these are the people that you'll work with at our organization, and we support that. So we don't have it's interesting because there's this whole idea of like, what's your philanthropic goal, or what kind of nonprofits or philanthropy do you support? And we don't necessarily have that. It's more based on the individuals at each of our different locations there.
Excellent. Well, we've got a few minutes left. Are there any questions in the room or online? Okay.
I will share, if you don't mind. Yes. So one thing that I think has been really successful, and we didn't talk about what's the most successful thing that maybe I've implemented that's been a tremendous asset for us, but we looked at, in our personas, we developed verticals, we call them. So one of our verticals, for example, is entrepreneurs. And not just entrepreneurs, but women entrepreneurs. So we developed out specific content and videos and events really targeted with that audience in mind. And I will tell you, video is underutilized in our industry as far as getting out there. So don't think you just have to write an article. And with social and some of the other things coming on, it doesn't have to be as polished as it used to. I'm still a firm believer in working with somebody that's skilled in it, and you want it to come across, professional-ish, I guess. But the people don't have to be. So we don't have to be in a suit and tie, right? Like people want that authenticity of like a person having a conversation. So if you see our videos, you'll see our team talking. We actually purposely had a conversation with them and said, explain to us this, like if you were talking to a new person coming onto our team. And we captured that, and it wasn't the initial intent of what we were going to use it for. And then we were like, this is phenomenal. Because when I said, let's do a video that for, an ad spot or a promotion, it went super tight again. And so I think finding ways that you can encourage that authenticity and come across to your true self and who you're talking to is really important. And from a content perspective, that wins out every time. Like our click-through rate is triple with that than the more buttoned up, if you will, voiceover, whatever it may be. Like people want authenticity. I will tell you one of the worst things that, not worse, but a failure, if you will, is our team had like this concept, and it was like, oh, we're the CEO, or they're the CEO, we're the CFO, CIO, and we developed this whole thing for that. I'm like, oh, that's cool, yeah. And I put it out there, and it did not stick. Like, it did not resonate at all. And what I learned is that's a conversation or a further down the funnel conversation for people then to understand. And I hadn't introduced high enough on the concept of why that was important first.
Excellent. And was there a question? Can everybody hear? Or can we get her a mic, please? Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to get everybody's brain. Okay. What I was saying is, for those of us who are not in such a niched market, where we're trying to go after a larger swatch of a group, say, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, whatever that is, authenticity takes on a very different meaning the younger you go. And they have a trust issue with the, I always call it dad-splaining. And yes, you can, because it's actually a thing, considering, they just don't want anything that their parents do or anyone that's older than a certain trigger in their brain. And so if your team is not filled with those young people, or those young people are not really able to be that content, what would you recommend? Because video does need to move fast. It can be raw, but you need material.
Okay, I just got so excited when you said that. So I see such a guerrilla marketing aspect for you that's a series of dad-splaining. And I think you find,
Like the worst dad joke guy ever.
I think
and so
you
I
could
kept
totally
on
go
saying,
for
I'm
it.
like, Nick, I'm going to put you on TikTok.
I think you could have him say something and then find a kid on the street, maybe it's one of your kids or something, I don't know. I'm probably way off compliance. That's the bold and then pull me back, but whatever. But I did when I worked at a college, we did a College Just Got Real series because there was something going on with that. And we had a cameraman follow around a person that was going to college that had drove through there was like sheep crossing a road or something. I don't know, it was crazy, but there's different ways that you can relate to your audience. And you have to get out of your own way. And so sometimes it's just iterating and thinking about, like, this person doesn't want to hear from the CEO or something like, hey, you should do this because you'll get better credit. Well, why do I want better credit right now? I'm invincible, right? So what's important to me is like, hey, Dad might help you get a car if you, if you could come up with a down payment, or I don't know. So I think there's different ways, and I love the youth because they don't have any filter on that, and then you can always filter back. Yeah.
Can we get a mic over here too?
I can repeat too if we need.
I am a millennial. I am often the youngest. Thank you. I am often the youngest person in the room in my line of work, and one thing that I often say is to try to encourage the talent pipeline, because representation is important. Not to suggest that, as you said, not to suggest that we can't relate, we can't find a common ground because of the difference of our age, but it is very imperative because the talent is out there. So I say if your group is not representative of the customers in which you serve, I would encourage very much so that it becomes more representative, because the talent is there, the market is there, and I just wanted to put that tidbit in there. We should definitely.
Mia is available.
Yeah. Oh, Maya.
No.
No, I'm not, but Maya, yep. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Any other questions? Well, in the 25 seconds we have remaining, it's been great having this conversation. Really enjoyed your perspective. Anything else you want to share as a final thought?
Yeah, no, I think that I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of brilliant people. I am very excited of what's going on in the financial industry and having conversations with you guys about how we lean in a bit more with digital and just leaning into that and just kind of breaking through some barriers there.
Be bold.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.